mentioned, I am Devin Koester. I am, for today anyway, going to be your field marshal. As you guys can tell, we got some Palmer in this field, and that's not good. So, the first step to solving a problem is to identify the biggest thieves in the field. Now, let's be honest, it's not your field, it's the neighbor's field, but it's good to know what's out there. These guys are wanted, dead or alive. Well, scratch that. Here's one dead. These are the 3 top weeds as compiled by the WSSA, or the Weed Science Society of America, as most troublesome and most common in both grass and broadleaf crops. So number 3 on the list, smooth pigweed, resistance to 7 sites of action across the world. Number 2, Waterhemp. Anybody? Raise your hand. Have you seen this? Do you know what this is? Yeah, what? 1, 2, only 2. Wow, that's surprising. We don't have a problem. This thing has resistance to 7 sites of action as well, with 6-way resistance being credited in Missouri, so not too far away. And then Waterhemp's wicked step cousin, Palmer amaranth. This thing's nasty. Resistance to 10 sites of action, resistance to 6 sites of action in a single population, mountain Kansas. Who knows what they're doing out there? So these guys are robbing you guys blind, okay? Waterhemp has shown 74% reduction in corn and 43% in soybeans when compared to season-long weed-free yield production. Palmer, I said it's a wicked step cousin for a reason, that reduces corn yield by 90% and 77% in soybeans. So you have a 200 bushel corn crop, get enough Palmer out there, now it's 20. That doesn't pencil out. Which leads us to 0. That's got to be the policy. Quote from Dr. Hager when he was in a podcast earlier this year: the next novel resistance mechanism may be carried by a seed on a plant that survived this growing season. So what is he saying? Essentially what he's saying is, it's late at night, you're driving home, that's that one field, got that bad corner, you see 5 Waterhemp plants, 5 Palmer plants. Supper's on the table, you already got a call, you gotta make it home, you see them. It's worth the time and effort to stop and pull those 5 plants. Because Palmer and Waterhemp have the ability to produce hundreds of thousands of seeds per plant. Which means those 5 plants, you decide, let them go, it'll be fine. They're not gonna affect the yield that much, bad corner. 500,000 seeds per plant, 2.5 million. That's how many seeds just went back into your soil seed bank because it wasn't worth the time. Now you're fighting this problem for the next 7 years. That extra diligence can affect the yield this year, but also set you up for success in the future. These guys didn't come to play. That 10 sites of action that Palmer has resistance to throughout the world, any one of these, that plant has shown the ability to get sprayed with at a field rate and survive, which means they're out. Okay. Anybody, Family Feud, 2 strikes, we're down to our last one. But it's a good thing we got a good one. Because we didn't come to play either. Through the utilization of herbicide synergies, we can drive these weeds out of your fields through the use of group 5 herbicides like atrazine or metribuzin, and combine that with group 27 herbicides like mesotrione or callisto. Using these multiple sites of action provides an avenue to keep these weeds out of your fields for the future years. So let's get to it. Synergy, the bread and butter of weed control. I love this stuff. So what is synergy, right? Well, it's 2 strong guys. They're each really good on their own. But they understand and come together and realize that together, they can beat this common problem. They can overcome it. So how does it work? Well, in the most basic sense, 1 + 1 = 3. Now, for those of you sitting out there, it's early in the morning, you say, well, that math actually works. It's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day. And why should you care? Here is a resistant population, that one from Kansas that I was telling you about, 6 modes of action, sites of action, resistance. I sprayed it with a group 5, and group 27, and those combined. As you can see, this atrazine did what it's supposed to for the most part. You got this beautiful burning, necrosis on the outer leaves here. But on the interior, you see all this nice green. That plant will go on, produce progeny, drop those seeds into the soil seed bank. You're going to be fighting that resistance mechanism in the future. Same thing with group 27, this mesotrione. Beautiful group 27 activity here. Bleaching of the center, but again, this plant resistance, you've got nice green tissue. Well, it's got nice green tissue. And it will go through the process, make seed, put it out. You'll be dealing with that in the future. But here's the thing. We put them together, and this is where we get this beautiful synergy. Look at that plant. Crisp, dead, even though it looks like there's a little green here. I might get some naysayers say, wow, that's going to survive. I promise you it didn't. I let it grow for another 2 days, and it was flat. So this is what we're going for weed control. Now, if you have soybeans that look like that, you got to talk to your agronomist. That's not my call. But for the most part, that's what we're going for weeds. Dr. Bilo loves to say that plant physiology is about the whys. Why does it work? Why does this happen in the plant? So let's go through the whys of this synergy process. Here we have our plant, our chloroplast. When the sun comes down, our energy in our chloroplast starts going up. We got electrons gaining energy. They make this an energy-rich system. Look how dark green this is. Think of it like this. This morning, Dr. Bilo woke up, rolled out of bed, low energy. Then he drank 4 cups of coffee. Now he's got to talk to somebody. He's got to preach about corn and stuff. And so, this is where the plastoquinone comes in, this PQ. This is you guys. You get to accept this information. You come in, you sit down, you take a seat. Dr. Bilo shoves this information in your face, and it sends it on down to the photosynthesis pathway. And this is how the plant continues to do this process. Let's add atrazine to this scenario. Sunlight comes down like normal. Our energy goes up in energy. Our system becomes energy rich. Build up of electrons. Except now, our atrazine is going to sit in that spot. Plastoquinone comes to sit in. They can't. So now Dr. Bilo got out of bed, had 4 cups of coffee, but instead of coming and talking to you lovely folks, he's got to sit down and write a paper. That's not fun. And he keeps drinking coffee. That's the problem. These electrons continue to occur. The sunlight doesn't stop. This is a process that, it's not like, oh, we're backed up here, so it backs up everything else. No, it keeps going, and then it hits a wall. And it just keeps flooding in at that wall. And that's how we get this atrazine damage. This necrosis on the outer leaves, burning, this is what you're looking for when you spray atrazine in your field. However, on this plant, as we can see, it's green, still alive. So why? Why can this plant survive? Well, now we're at the casino. The plant's trying to stack the deck. It puts these circles around atrazine. Now, this could be chemical degradation. It could be adding a group to the atrazine. It could be just as simply shuffling it away and stuffing it in the corner. The point is, now we're running with a 2 to 7 ratio. That's not good for us. It's why we show burning, but it doesn't result in a dead plant. Not to mention, to make matters worse, it bumps up that plastoquinone production. So now instead of a 2 to 7, which maybe it would have worked, but now we're running a 2 to 11, a 2 to 15. That's not a good ratio. That plant will survive. In comes the synergy. Now, I realize it's early in the morning. I went through this stuff in class, and it was a little it was a little rich, too rich for my blood. So I'm not gonna force you guys to understand that. But the important thing is we're gonna identify that H3PD. That's the important part of this process, because that H3PD creates this compound, which results in the production of plastoquinone. That should look familiar, I hope. So, the plant's producing this plastoquinone, this compound. We're going to add our mesotrione, the callisto, to the tank. It's going to block that H3PD pathway, which results in no more plastoquinone. The plant doesn't produce it. So what does that mean when you're looking at it from a synergy perspective? Back to our chloroplast, a plant stacks the deck. It's bumped up plastoquinone, or it tries to. It puts circles around the atrazine, but now we have that mesotrione in the tank, and that results in, there they all go. Now we're sitting with a 2 to 1 ratio. Now we're back in the driver's seat. House stack the deck, but we're counting cards. And that's where we get this beautiful control of this plant, right here. Crispy, dead, smoked. Images and nice animations are all fine and good, but let's throw some data behind this. Give it a little solidity. When mesotrione sprayed with that plant you've been seeing over and over again, that 6-way resistance polymer amaranth, to get 90% control in the field. So 10% of it is still weeds, but we'll just go for 90%. It's going to take 189 fluid ounces to the acre. Anybody, top of your head right now, fluid ounces to the acre of Callisto sprayed post on corn over the top? Come on, somebody be brave. Shoot out a number. 1.5 gallons. Not quite. 3. It's 3 fluid ounces, which means it takes 63 passes at a labeled rate to get 90% control of that field. So you fill the tank with a labeled rate, go out and spray. Come back, fill the tank, go out and spray. Do that 61 more times, and you'll get 90% of them. That's not good. That doesn't work. So let's add group 5. Let's add metribuzin to this tank. To get 90% control now, when we add this synergistic combination, 3.16. By adding that second group, which it's a resistant to, by the way, we can still pull that use rate back into the field of a label rate. Add a couple more things in the tank, and it makes it even better. One spray pass. That's what you're looking at when you use the synergistic combinations. So that's post. Everyone loves post. Because you can see the plant, you can see it work, you can see the plant die. It's healthy. It makes you feel good. But can this process be moved or utilized in a pre-emergence system? Post-emergence shows group 5, group 27 synergy can control resistant populations of polymer amaranth when they're already standing. Pre-emergence may result in the same effect, increased chemical ability and longevity, reducing weeds and improving yield control over consecutive years. So let's go into it. Get a little more data. There's some prerequisites to this slide. First thing you got to know, all this data, or this area covered with weeds, that is the percent of the field that is weeds. So if it was 10%, that means 10% of the field is weeds, 90% is clear. These numbers were taken 42 days after application of a pre-emergence, so 6 weeks. 6 weeks on the pre-emergence. So we're putting these chemicals to their absolute limit to see what the ability of them is. So when we look at our individual chemicals by themselves, Balance Flex, or Group 27, had 12% of the field covered with weeds 42 days after a pre-emergence application. Metribuzin only had 3% of the field. Put them together, we drop it down to 2. Granted, it's not a big jump, but as Dr. Sybil and Bilo mentioned, last year was dry. It was beautiful for my weed control because I planted, I sprayed my pre-emergence, and I got about 3/4 of an inch within 24 hours. Beautiful incorporation. And then it didn't rain for 45 days. And weeds don't like to grow without water. Just like corn, but weeds especially when they're fighting their chemical. So that's why this weed control looks really good. But let's look at it from a yield perspective. We have 177 and 160 respectively. Now you may be thinking, Devin, that doesn't make any sense. The metribuzin had much better weed control, but the yield is 17 bushels per acre lower. Well, that's because metribuzin, for those of you that know, or those of you that don't, metribuzin is a little hard on corn. It likes to sting it a little bit. So when we put these two together, we get this big bump, up to 189. So not only do we have the better weed control, but part of the reason that these two work together is Balance Flex has a safener in it. So you get the combination effect of that Group 5 and that Group 27 for weed control, and that Group 27 brings in a safener so you're not dinging your corn with your metribuzin. Kind of like a match made in heaven. So this was last year. Good for weed control, dry, not a lot of weeds, pushing up through that program. Let's look at it from this year, much different. A lot of rain, a lot of flushes of weeds. Here we have our balanced flex and our metribuzin. Balanced flex went from 12 to 22, so now about a quarter of the field is weeds. Metribuzin went from 3 to 45, so now about half. Put those two together, orange, good, it's not great. We get down to 15% of the area covered with weeds. We bolster this a little bit more. As I said, those synergistic combinations work, but let's add something else to the tank, give it a little more meat, we'll say. We got a 22, a 45, a 31, and a 53. Not good numbers by any means. Shove them all together though, and we drop that down to 10. Now we hit that 90% threshold that we were looking for when we were analyzing our single mode of action. Ultimately, we're trying to return law to the field. Identifying and managing problematic weed species is vital for securing a path to produce more yield. Utilizing multiple sites of action over various application timings, over various crops, with the incorporation of different mechanical and thinking outside of the box means of weed control provides the best process to get these weeds under control and maintain the control. As Dr. McGlamory has been quoted saying, or Dr. Aaron Hager's predecessor, for those of you that don't know, 1 year of seeding results in 7 years of weeding, which means those 5 plants that we drove by, they're in the corner, we were late for dinner, you're gonna have to deal with an angry wife when we got home, or husband. Now you're dealing with it for the next 7 years. Ultimately, it comes down to this. Let me, the marshal, clean up your field and keep it clean for you. Controlling the weeds this year, in the present, and in the future, provides an avenue to produce more yield more consistently in your future years. I love my colleagues. They have some great stuff to tell you guys and teach you guys, but there's a reason I got to go for it first, because I'm the most important, something like that. It's a prerequisite. Without a clean field, these programs that you're going to hear today, there's beautiful, amazing science happening. It's essentially handing over a 20 and getting back a 10, because the weeds are taking the other 10 and running to the bank. Thank you guys for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the day. I'd love to field any questions that you guys may have.